I'm Mike Wright. This is my observatory place, I guess is what you'd say. Just a place, spot out in the back of my house. This is one of the several telescopes that I own, but this is the one I use probably most often now because it's small enough to be portable, and, you know, a little, not too heavy, a little easier to carry around. It's made by Celestron, is the brand, the company that makes these. Amateur astronomers are pretty familiar with Celestron and Meade, and there's a couple of other brands too. But this is a Celestron, the tripod. Again, it's a Celestron tripod. It's just kind of their standard stainless steel tubing. It's adjustable as far as height. The spread on it is pretty much set by the accessory holder that's in here. So it pretty much has to have that spread to make it stable. But the legs can be extended considerably more than what they are. This just happens to be, for me, a convenient height because it puts the rest of the scope down in a easy to get to position. It also will have on it a little holder for the hand controller to the telescope. It's just a plastic little compartment that's made to fit on the legs. Some of these will have a bubble level on them to where you can actually level them. This model doesn't have, but I've never found that I actually needed it. So basically, if you just get this close to level, it'll work from there. Okay, coming up, the next thing is actually the mount, or the head of the mount. Some people consider the tripod and the mount as one unit. Actually, they're two. They separate right here if you need to take them apart, you know, like for transportation. But they can stay permanently attached. They're still pretty light, just this part. So the mount would go from sitting on top of the tripod up to the mount for the telescope tube itself. It would include the two locking mechanisms for the right ascension and declination motions of the telescope, which would be the two motions that it moves in. If you loosen this one, you can see that it moves this way. And if you loosen the other one, then you can see that it rotates the other way. It also is going to have this shaft with the counterweights. The counterweights are removable. They're also adjustable up and down on the shaft. So what you might need to change was how much weight, or where the weight on the shaft was for the optical tube. It could be different. So this optical tube that's on here needs this weight, and it needs to be in this position to balance it. And so if you loosen it up and you move it, it's balanced. You don't see either end going up or down. That's very important because it makes the motors work much easier. So you want them to be balanced like that. The other movement, this one, not nearly so important, but you still want to get it reasonable. You can see this one's pretty much happy wherever you just let it go. But these are going to be normally locked when you're actually using the telescope. So that is going to include the mount. Now on the other side over here, you'll also see the power card that's connecting to move this. It can either be 12 volt or just regular AC. It will accept both. You know, they have to be made for this, but it either is available. So if you have electricity available, you can use that. If you want to have one of the power tank battery things, it'll do the same job. They don't pull a lot of current, so the small rechargeable batteries will easily run one for the night. Also, you've got the hand controller connection there. Something you're going to need to do all your movements and alignments and finding of stuff. And then it's going to have the tightening knobs to hold the bracket that your scope is actually set in. So that pretty much gets you up to, one other thing is, it's going to have some adjustments. These are the same. This is the one front and the back. That's going to adjust the tilt of it. And these two knobs will move it back and forth. This is for the manual adjustment, like if you're polar aligning on the North Star. That will get you up to the optical tube. All right, now we're up to the optical tube, realizing that this particular optical tube is not the only one that could be on this mount. It could be any one of a number. This mount is made to hold up to probably 11-inch telescopes. This one is an 8-inch. It could hold a little bigger. I wouldn't trust it. It might be a little too much weight on it. Which also means, though, that it could hold 4, 4.5, 6, 8, 9 1/4, 10, 12, 11, maybe. And almost all of the smaller refractor telescopes. This is a Smith-Cassegrain telescope. This also is a Celestron Edge HD, which is a newer type from the last 3 years or so. Has a little better optics in it than what they had previously. It works really well. What's on it is it has some vent holes in here, and actually what it does, it has some small fans in there that ventilate it. It's just for days like this when it's maybe 100 degrees. It helps cool, and the mirrors and glass surfaces in there can adjust to the temperature a little better. In days past, when you had big telescopes and not much ventilation, you might have to sometimes wait for a couple of hours for the optical part of your scope to come down to ambient temperature, which some people didn't want to wait 2 hours. What it has on it is the place for the eyepiece or camera, whatever you're going to put on there. There could be a number of different things actually here. This one also has this part, which is what you call a diagonal. So what it does is it has a reflective surface in there at an angle. So it's going to take the light path coming out, which would go to the eyepiece, and just send it up almost at a right angle. So it's a little more convenient to put your eyepieces in. Like, I could show you how you would just set it in a couple of thumb screws to tighten it up in case you turn it somewhere you don't want it falling out. Now, some of these will have compression rings instead of screws. They both work equally well. This is the focusing knob on it. These other two knobs here are to lock the mirror in place so that when you're moving from one side or another, you don't get any mirror shift, they call it. This is the finder scope, just a small powered, I think this one is 9x50 finder scope. It came with this optical tube, and it's just to center things. It's like looking through a decent pair of binoculars is what it would be. It has crosshairs in it, so you can make sure you're really centered on whatever it is. And so you align this scope with these screws here to match what you see in the eyepiece. it's real easy to do that in the daytime and set your scope up. You don't have to worry about any of the other stuff. Just point at something that's off in the distance and start getting it to where the two images are the same in both things. This one will obviously have a lot more power, magnification. This one is one that I added after I bought this, and this is just a what they call a red dot finder. It has a little holographic circle, actually two circles, that it projects on a piece of glass. There's no magnification to it. So you just look in there and turn it on, and it's just a single red thing. It's kind of like a rough alignment, maybe a little more precise alignment, and then hopefully it's in the center. So this is, that's pretty much the whole optical tube. So you'll hear these referred to as OTA, optical tube assemblies. And again, there are lots of different sizes and a lot of different ones, but they're all pretty much referred to as optical tubes. So that's this system as it sits. All right, if we were going to mount the camera, this is a Mallincam. This is one of several Mallincams that are in production these days. This is a Hyper Plus, which is actually an older model. I'm not even sure that he makes these anymore. He makes ones that are much more advanced. They don't cost much more than this one did, but they're a little more advanced. It has the controls on the side to adjust the exposure time, and a cooler that's either on or off. This whole aluminum bar here is actually also for cooling. It can come off of here. It's just got some set screws that are holding it on. This would be the sensor, the important part of the camera. It's in a sealed glass argon filled tube basically, and which is something that when I bought this camera you couldn't get that. I had this one retrofitted to that. This is actually not part of the camera. This is my deal. This is a safety thing to hook onto something, because sometimes in the dark things that you think are securely in may fall out. Yeah. So I'd rather it fall and swing on this rope than fall and hit on the ground. On the back of it are the power connection. Actually, this is the power connection. It also has a real small little light there that you barely can see when it's on, but it at least will tell you, yes, it's powered. This is a S-video connector. These are out plugs for if you want to connect to an S-video capable monitor. This would be that if you want to use the regular, RCA type, the BNC plug for this. This is to connect a remote controller, which I don't have. These are actually the control buttons for all the programs that are in the camera. These will pull up menus on the screen of the monitor for you to adjust things like the gain of the camera. If you don't want to see color, you want to see black and white, you can do that. If you want to reverse the image or invert the image, you can do it from here. You can change the sensitivity of it. You can set some of the gamma readings on it. You can also type labels for the images you're seeing, which is very time consuming. It's very nice, but by the time you type all those in, you probably want to look at something else. So that's the main connections to it. It would usually either have just a hollow tube right here that would probably be about ½ inch long. That it's just an optical tube, no lens, nothing in it, and it would just fit right in there. And then you would tighten it just like you would if it was an eyepiece or a diagonal. He does have some different spacers available for this. This one is made to fit into the small size eyepiece, you know, the 1.5 inch eyepieces. Some telescopes are 2 inch, especially a lot of the newer ones are the bigger ones. There's a little nose fitting that will just go over this whole thing that makes it 2 inches. So it's 2 inches in diameter, not necessarily 2 inches long. There also are some, what he calls a MFR5 focal reducer that can go on here, which is a really helpful thing. It's going to change the F ratio of your whole system. So you're going to get a little less magnification, but bigger field of view. And a lot of things, the bigger field of view is helpful. To get the whole thing in there, you may need that. So I normally use an MFR5, and it will make this about 1.5 inches long. Other than that, the nice thing too about the MFR5, on the end of it, you can put in any of the standard filters. So if you want to look at something in a colored filter, you can do it. Or if you want to put in what they call a nebula filter, you can do that. Or if you want to put in an IR cut filter, which improves the image for some photographic things, you can do that. They're just removable. Simple couple of turns and they're in, couple of turns, they're out. So if you have filters, there's a good place to put them. And that pretty much covers the camera. Okay, to align, there are a number of different alignments. I think any scope mount that you would buy will come with pretty good directions on the alignments, because most of these manufacturers know that it's very important that you be able to get it aligned. Otherwise, you're not going to really think a whole lot of what you bought. And they've gotten much better at this than what they used to be. They've got a number of systems now that you pretty much do nothing to align. Celestron and Meade both have scopes that will pretty much align themselves. Some people like that.
Yeah, how do you do it?
What I do with this one, this mount is called a German Equatorial Mount. It's been around for a long time. It has this distinctive shape in the mount that comes, up and then almost turns at a 90-degree angle, and then the counterweights, balance it. What I do is that if you look on the mount, they're going to have 2 points where they're going to have marks that you want to start with those marks together. And I don't know if you can see under here, it might be, there's the ones for that part, and that's going to be adjusted over here. So see, if you loosen this, you can move that. What you want to do is eyeball to get that as close in a line as you can. And then if you look up a little higher, there's 2 more that go with the motion of the optical tube. Again, the same thing. You want to loosen this, get them as close as you can get them. I mean, realizing that you may be slightly off every time you do it. That's fine. Then what you want to do is set your scope up in the general direction of the North Star, Polaris. We're very fortunate to have a fairly bright star almost on the spot that's the North Pole, the celestial North Pole. And that's what we use, and it's close enough that we can use it. If we were going to have really precise polar alignment and going to do long exposure photography, probably aligning on Polaris wouldn't work. Wouldn't be quite good enough because it's slightly off. So there are a lot of charts that will show you exactly how far displaced from Polaris you want to be. That's not normal. I've done that once or twice. It was not worth the trouble. It was way more trouble than it got you. So what you want to do is get fairly close. The easiest thing to do would be to wait till the sky's dark enough to see Polaris. I just happen to know, and if I didn't know, I could use a compass or the compass on my phone and let it tell me where north is, and I could be probably really close. I know that the up and down movement of this mount is probably within a few arc seconds of being correct, because I've done it, aligned it a number of times, and I have not moved it since then. So I don't have to worry too much about that.
You set it out. Is there a way?
There is a way, if you know, like from where you are, your latitude, longitude, your latitude.
How do you set the angle?
Well, actually,
or do you have a mark?
This one, this scope has a little here under here.
I see it. Yeah.
And if you just get close, you're going to be in the ballpark. Here it's like 30-something degrees. Yeah. So if you set it on there, you'll be reasonably close.
Okay.
But like I say, the very easiest way is wait till you can see the North Star.
Yeah.
It'll come out before the sky is completely dark, because it's a second magnitude star, so it shows up pretty well. You know where to look for it, right out there. I happen to know where to look for it from here, because that bat house that's right there, I put it there, so that right off the back edge of it, if you went straight up, there would be the North Star.
So you got a marker.
Yeah, so I have a marker, and I also know that if you make a fist and extend it at arm length, there's about 10 degrees if you're looking at it.
Yeah.
So if you started at the horizon and went 3 times up, you're getting close to the North Star.
Okay. So then how? Find
the North Star. You have your mark set. And actually, everything I'm going to tell you, this hand pad's going to tell you to do.
Yeah.
We're still aligning. We're doing the polar alignment. We have our mark set. We have something in our eyepiece holder, probably this, an eyepiece. And we know that our finder scope and our eyepiece are reasonably close aligned, so that they're both looking at the same field of view. So once we turn the scope on, power it on with this, just a flip of this switch here, then we can see a little button on the side here that's just saying you have power. But then you also will see your hand pad, your controller pad, come on and start telling you some messages. This is a red field for night vision, but as you can see with the light on, you can see it well in the day. It adjusts itself, and it is also manually adjustable through the programs here. It looks like there's a lot of buttons. Like most things, you're only probably going to use a few of them. But what it comes up telling you, and most scopes will say something very similar. Obviously you don't have to keep this there, you can move it, but it's just saying press enter to begin alignment. So it's not actually prompting you to do anything yet, it's just saying start. So you would press enter, which is the center top button, one of the more prominent ones. You would press that, nothing will move, nothing's going to happen. And then when you do that, it's going to say to set the mount on the marks, the 2 marks that we talked about. And what it's going to want you to do then is to get Polaris, the North Star, centered in your optical train. So you would be looking at Polaris, you would get it on your crosshairs in your finder scope, check that it's on here. There are buttons on here that will move the mount in all the 4 directions that it can move in, which would be to either side, left and right, and up and down. You don't want to use any of these buttons in the first part of the alignment. What you want to move is these buttons. This and its front counterpart will tilt the mount up and down. These 2 will swing the whole thing left and right. So you can either move them with that. If you want to move the whole mount, that's okay too. If you want to just like physically scoot this over a little, that's all right. But what you don't want to do is engage the motors. You want to do this all manually, and that's what these knobs are for. If you're close enough to have it in the eyepiece and the finder scope, you're certainly close enough to align it with these. In the finder scope, you can center it right on the crosshairs. You can get eyepieces that have crosshairs in them. I don't use them. I just eyeball. Does that mean I'm always exactly right? No, I'm not. But you can get them, and they're relatively inexpensive because they don't have to be really good eyepieces, because of the crosshairs, probably all you're going to use them for is alignment. So you would do that, then you would hit enter again, and what it will come up with is a series of dates, time, and places, basically. So it's going to say the time, this is in military, 24-hour time, and you just enter whatever time it is. Some scopes will have a small battery inside this that will actually keep time for years, but this one doesn't, so it's going to lose it, and so you would have to enter it. And this one was last set, it was at 21:30. Obviously that's not what time it is right now, but you just change this. You'd change it with all of these keys here are like like a phone pad numbered. They also do something else, but they'll do just numbers for this. So you would enter the correct time. When you're done, you'll hit enter again, and it will say daylight savings or not. It's going to give you 2 choices there. We are in daylight savings. You change any of these by the arrow keys up and down, and then you hit enter again. It's going to say what time zone are you in. We're in the central USA. It's already in there, so you hit enter again, and it's going to ask you the date, like 07 14 15, day, month, day, year, and you did enter there. So then you hit enter that. This one is coming up, the first thing it's going to say is 2-star alignment. That is what I normally do. That's a real good one to do. Not too much involved, and in fact I usually will do at least one more than 2, and it will give you that option as you go through it. And it will say, you also have other options over here with the arrow key, so you can hit this and you can go 1-star alignment, you can go quick align, Now this is something that if your scope has been sitting in the same place, you could probably get away with. What you would say quick align is, I've centered it on Polaris, and that's all I want to do. And just punch quick align and you're done. So.
Well, what's the difference between a one-star alignment and a quick align?
It doesn't count Polaris as a star alignment.
Oh, okay.
It's what it's doing. Okay. So when you say one star, it actually means one other star than Polaris.
Okay.
It takes Polaris as you've aligned the mount on Polaris. Now we want to do stars. So the quick align, if you were, if you came out and you wanted to see the moon and you wanted to be able to track it fairly accurately, you could probably point at Polaris and do the quick align, not align on any stars, go to the moon, and it would be either on it or so close that you could follow it most of the night.
Okay, well that's good to know.
So you've got some options there, and then there is also one that says last alignment, and that most of these scopes, if you truly leave them, don't touch them, maybe put a cover over them, leave them a day or so, you can put them in hibernation, come back and turn them on and start all over. You don't have to align, period. And then there is one other that called solar alignment. Obviously in the daytime you don't have any of these things to align on, and if you are doing solar viewing, you need something to say, here's where I am. You can tell at date time where you are and then line on the sun, and that will get you pretty well. So there are some options, but the 2-star alignment is what I usually do.
What stars do you use?
It's going to tell you. So if it's on 2-star alignment now, and I punch enter, it comes up and it says Arcturus. Now you have to remember that it's already using the program in here, and it knows the date, the time, what time zone you're in, whether it's daylight saving, and it knows where you are. It didn't come up on here because I haven't changed where I am, but if you were truly starting from scratch, it'll come up and you'll have to tell it where you are.
Okay, so that's what you use here?
Yeah.
Arcturus? Yeah,
well, that's what it's going to say.
Yeah.
It's actually got Arcturus on here.
Right.
And what it's saying is, says select star 1, Arcturus. Now, I can do these up and down buttons.
Okay, is that Arcturus because it's A?
Because it
starts with A?
Yeah, no, because it's nice and bright.
Oh, okay.
And it knows, the computer in here knows that it's way up high.
Right, okay.
It doesn't like things low on the horizon.
Okay.
And if you look, Arcturus is that really bright thing.
Oh yeah.
Really bright. So even if you're a relative novice and you have a simple little map, that's going to show up really well. And when you tell this, you see, now if you don't like Arcturus, say you come out here and you know maybe 5 stars, and Arcturus is not one of them. And so when it comes up and says Arcturus, you're thinking, how will I know if I went to it or not? So you can start these up and down buttons and scroll through other stars, and they will come up alphabetically.
Okay.
And then you get to someone like Vega, and you say, oh, I know where Vega is. So you select Vega. But what it's going to do too is, if you take the meridian, the center point, it's going to pick these 2 stars on the west side. And then if you want to add any, it'll pick them all on the east side. Okay. So it's really good to have some on both sides. So let's say we say Arcturus is fine. You punch that button, and it's going to go to where it thinks Arcturus is. Now, in our case, will it be on Arcturus? Probably not, because we couldn't really see the North Star.
Yeah.
So maybe we were on the North Star, maybe we weren't. But from looking at this, if you would stand behind it and look up, it's pretty close, I would say. It may not actually be in the eyepiece, but we're certainly in the ballpark. And so now what it's going to ask you to do is it's going to say center Arcturus. And then on the bottom line here, it's got a longer scrolling message that's going to say center the star on the crosshairs of the finder scope, not the eyepiece, the finder scope. Center it in the finder scope, and when you get it centered, press enter. And then the message is going to change to say center it in the eyepiece. And these you're going to do all these movements with the motors on the mount.
Okay.
Nothing manually anymore. So the computer's calculating how much you're having to change. And when you get that centered, this is the first time you don't press enter. It's going to say press align, which is this button over here. And so when you press align, it's going to immediately go to the second star. And in this case, it's Spica, the bright star in Virgo. So if we hit enter, it's going to move to where it thinks that is. Now, it's kind of calculated where Arcturus was. And so it's gone down over to there. And I'd say again, it's really close. Spica is not as bright as Arcturus, but it's still a first magnitude star. And I can see it, and I would say we're pretty much there. It's the same thing again. You align it in the finder scope, you hit enter, you align it in the eyepiece, you hit align, and then it's going to come up with a message that says hit enter to add a calibration star. And I would suggest that it normally is a good idea to add at least one.
Okay.
These are both been on the same side of the meridian. This one is not going to be. So I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to say Deneb, which is a star in Cygnus, the Swan.
Right.
And it's back over here. So if I tell it, okay, that's fine, I just hit enter. Now you're going to see it do a complete flip. This is what they call a meridian flip, from one side to the other side. So, it takes it a few seconds. You can make this a little bit faster. It's got adjustable speeds. I'm pretty happy. This is good. I mean, this is good enough for me. I can stop and do something else maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe I get a drink or sit down. So, Deneb is going to be, I can see it over there.
That's Spica, right up there?
Yeah, it's not, no, that's Vega. It's farther down. See, it's pretty low over there. So, it's going to be the same routine. It's going to say, center it in the finder, hit enter, center it in the eyepiece, hit align, and then it's going to, what it's going to say, it's going to pause and say, calibrating. And then it's going to come up with, and say 1 star calibrated. In other words, it's happy with everything so far. And then it's going to immediately prompt you under that, say, would you like to add another one? You don't have to.
Right.
It's going to say, hit enter if you want to, and you hit back if you want to stop. If you hit enter, it's going to pick Shula, which is a little farther around, a little higher up. And it'll be the same thing. It'll let you do this. It'll let you add 4. If you want to be really, you know,
Right.
what I would do is, Shula is down in Sagittarius, actually. So you can see Sagittarius is probably behind that tall tree right there, but we're not using it anyway. And then on any of these, you still have the option to scroll to a different star. So every chance you can, and so it will do 4. It won't do any more than 4.
How long does the alignment take like this?
Not too long. Actually, what you'll find is once you get the first star aligned, Arcturus, then it's going to be better at it. Every one after that. If Arcturus is off a little at first, not a big deal. I mean, you know, I was actually out here last night, but not with this scope. So it may or may not be real close.
Yeah.
I was out here 2 or 3 nights ago with this scope. So if I align it on Polaris, it should get reasonably close even from the beginning. But I was going to say what you'll notice, what you should notice, you align Arcturus or the first star, any first star. You may have to make a little adjustment, and that's to be expected almost.
Yeah.
When you do the second one, you still may have to adjust a little. But once it gets those 2, then it should be really close. They certainly should all be in the field of view when you look. If they're not, you can probably guess that something's not going to turn out well in the end. But usually, once you've set the first and second, of course now, then you're going to switch all the way over. So that could be off a little. But then, like in this case, once we set on Deneb, and then it went to Shula, and then if we ask it to go, and it went to Vasgali and Vega, say, those last few should have almost been perfect. You should almost not have to do anything. When you finish, each time it's going to say calibrating. And as long as it says calibrated, and it'll say 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star, then it's accepted it. If it didn't accept it, it's going to tell you something else. You'll know. And then when it gets through, it's just going to go back to its main menu and say that ADV scope. And then you do whatever you want to. You go from there.
Okay.
And how long it should take may depends on if the scope's been set up in this location recently. It shouldn't take long. If you know something is off, if you go to the first star and then you go to the second star and you're nowhere close, something you might as well start over, because that shouldn't happen. And the computer is fairly good at getting in the ballpark. So things you might want to look for, if it's not looked like it's going well, is go back and check the date, time, that kind of stuff. Because see, that'll throw you off. And if you don't have it down as daylight savings time, then you're an hour off. And those things, in an hour, the stars move considerably. Yeah. And so if everywhere it's going, it's an hour different than what you're on, you're never going to get it right.
Okay.
And if you don't align on the North Star, you're in trouble. And I've seen that happen. And if you're used to where you are, that probably won't happen. But I tell you what I saw quickly, a very experienced amateur astronomer who was a little older than me and probably spent at least as many years as I have doing astronomy. We were out at Fort Davis in West Texas. The skies out there are so dark that it's very easy to get lost in the sky. You see stars that you've never seen anywhere else, and they look bright. And we were out there, and he had an 8-inch Celestron telescope, and he was aligning, and he set it up, and then for the next 45 minutes, he's like, I can't get it to go to anything. And he said, would you look at this? And I said, well, if you didn't do it, I don't feel very confident that I can do it. And we went over it and back, and he said, that is Arcturus, isn't it? And I said, yeah. And he said, and that's Vega, and that's so-and-so. And he was standing there for a few seconds, and he said, but that's not Polaris that I aligned on. And I said, well, then you're lost. And he aligned it on Polaris. Bam, everything was perfect.